I'm Paul Krikorian, the Vice Chair of the Jobs and Business Development Committee. Mr. Alarcon is not present today, so I'll be conducting today's meeting, and I think we're expecting Mr. Parks shortly, but we're ready to begin. It's now 20 after 1 on June 28th, and we will have a general public comment at the end of the agenda items. If anyone would like to offer general public comment, please fill out a card like this and bring it up. And let's proceed, Mr. Chavez, to agenda item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Carol Anderson, Richard Bembo, David Flax, Sean Fonder, Jackie Honore, Victoria Kane, Don Wu Lee, Art Lopez, Frank Miramontes, Jackie Mazel Burt, Ruth Lopez Novador, Robert Saucedo, and Frank Velasco. The appointment of Shomari Davis, Camelia Eng, Anita Gabrielian, Ken Phillips, and William Wallace to the Workforce Investment Board for the term ending June 30th, 2013, and the appointment of Felicito Callajon to WIV for the term ending June 30th, 2012.
Thank you. Now, if anyone would like to offer public comment on this agenda item or any of the other agenda items, likewise, please fill out a item-specific card. What I'm going to do on this item, because I know some but not all of these appointees, and just looking at the list of names and looking at the crowd, I know that not everyone is here. So what I'm going to do is just go through these names, and as I call out each one, if you are here, come on forward and to the front table, and then when we have the mics full, we'll ask everybody to offer a little bit of thought about the Workforce Investment Board, this appointment, and why you are interested in continuing to serve the city in this way. So, if we could call on Carol Anderson, Richard Benbow, David Flax, Sean Fonder, Jackie Honore, Victoria Kane, Dong Wu Lee, Art Lopez, Frank Miramontes, Jackie Mazel Burt, Ruth Lopez Novador, Robert Saucedo, and Frank Velasco. Okay, so none of those nominees for reappointment appear to be here. So we'll move on to the new appointees. So the new appointees are next, and they are Shomari Davis, Camilla Eng, Anita Gabrielian, and Ken Phillips, and Willem Wallace. Is it Wallace or Wales? Wallace. Wallace. All right. All right. Well, why don't we go left to right, Mr. Wallace? If you could start and just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and what you would like to see accomplished in your appointment.
Sure. Well, I'm Bill Wallace. I'm very active in the harbor region of LA, so San Pedro, Wilmington, and Harbor City, Harbor Gateway. I'm First Vice President of the Harbor Association of Industry and Commerce, and I'm also Chair-elect of the San Pedro Chamber Board of Directors. I'm also very active with LA Harbor College and with various efforts in the harbor area to improve both the business climate, but also the environmental climate of the harbor region. Have been working with both the city and the Pacific Gateway Workforce Investment Network to better leverage the dollars that are earmarked or not earmarked, that are dedicated to a certain area, and ensure that they're effectively used and that there are measurable results in our community. So that's my motivation to participate.
Thank you.
Ken Phillips with the Valley Economic Alliance, Vice President of Workforce. Been working with the local work source centers for the past dozen years. Been an alternate to Bruce Ackerman for the last 4 years, and been attending the executive boards for the last year and a half. This would be my first appointment to the Workforce Investment Board. We do many things with the local workforce centers, employment development department, and the local community colleges to go ahead and help people get a job or provide the training in order to get the next job. And in short, we work with the 4 local community colleges in the San Fernando Valley, and that would include Glendale as well, too, so one outside the city of Los Angeles area. But we work with the LA County and the LA City workforce centers that are in the valley. We also write lots of grants for the community colleges in order to go ahead and get the additional training dollars, either for vets or specific lower income individuals, in order to go ahead and get them back on track as well, too.
Thank you. Ms. Gabrielian.
Yes, Councilman Krikorian. Anita Quinones-Gabrielian, Regional Vice President for AT&T, who believes in having a ready workforce, and I am now being appointed to the WIB, hopefully, and confirmed today, because I also hold the mission of workforce investment boards as key to improving our economy. I have been very involved with other economic development organizations, mostly in the San Gabriel Valley, some in the San Fernando Valley. As past chairman of the board of the San Gabriel Valley Economic Partnership, I'm currently the president of Glendale Community College Board of Trustees, and I see the need and the essence of the mission of our WIB here as very important. And what I would like to see is not only to leverage these dollars more, but also to find more collaboration with community colleges, with members of the industry, to make sure that we connect all the dots and just exponentially grow and make it more effective.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Camilla Ng. I was a former city attorney here in LA, and I'm currently the general counsel of a company called JM Eagle. We have about 5 plants in the state of California, 2 major plants here in LA. We employ over 500 people in the state of California. And I'm here really as a resident of the city of LA. Workforce investment has been something that I've benefited when I was a teenager. I grew up inner city and was able to get jobs as a high school student. And those jobs made an impression on me and have made a significant difference in my professional development. And I think it's really important to ensure that these dollars go to programs that are meaningful for the participants, and for participants to actually speak of their experience, to ensure that more dollars are actually attained for the city of LA. So I don't, it's an honor to be here amongst the other 3 nominated folks. I don't have the sort of depth of experience, but I'm here to offer my experience and really to learn and to make a difference.
Thank you. Just collectively, what do any of you think, if you have thoughts about specific steps the City of Los Angeles should be taking to try to assist businesses in achieving a more prepared workforce? What are the things that we're not doing as well as we should be doing in preparing a workforce for the businesses that we want to attract to Los Angeles?
I'll take that, the first one. Thank you, Council Member. One of the things that the city is doing now, but could do some additional promotions of driving people to the Workforce Investment new website. It's a wonderful website if anybody hasn't had a chance to go to it. And very specifically, the Jobs LA piece, has thousands of jobs in there. So I suspect that with all of the efforts that the local workforce centers are doing, they went to the jobsla.org website that the city owns, and it's just recently launched, but provides some more media and letting people know about all the different resources, including the jobs on that website.
In terms of helping to prepare our workforce, especially for the economy of the 21st century, are there opportunities? Ms. Gabrielian mentioned more partnership with the community colleges, and I think developing a stronger partnership between the city and both the community colleges and LAUSD is important for us as we move forward in trying to fully leverage the advantages that we have here in establishing that workforce. Do any of you have any thoughts about what specific steps we might be taking to do a better job of that, building that kind of partnership?
I'd be glad to answer part of that just for the harbor region. One of the things we've been trying to do, and the City of LA staff has been awesome with, particularly Estella Catanzarite does an awesome job on trying to pull all the service providers together in a quarterly meeting at least, and try to make everybody aware of one another. We got into that when we tried to start a youth entrepreneur program, and we found out that there were several little starts here and there at different ages, at different levels. And I guess the one thing that I would say concerns me with what we might be able to do better is that we strive to train the people and prepare the people that are within our city. Often some of these programs become generalized in a high school student should know X, Y, Z, and we forget that we have localized populations with some localized strengths and also some localized weaknesses that we need to address. And for the communities that live in those areas, we are trying to make it sustainable so that the parents can have the children stay, that there are jobs for and futures. Certainly rolls right into the issue with gangs and crime. So making sure that we're going after the people that are in our regions, and if that requires something a little bit different than perhaps the Valley, we need to do that.
Ms. Gabrielle.
Thank you. Councilman, I'm a novice in understanding LA politics and what is being done right now. So it may already be happening, but I think in order to get the collaboration that I'm thinking of, we've got to start with the leadership of city government and community colleges and the LAUSD working together and finding a clear message and maybe ways in areas where there's a need and someone else has the resource, or where there's a resource, someone else has the capabilities of going after grants, etc., and working together to fill the need for LA. And then once we can communicate that clearly, then we go down to the grassroots level, and then they'll have clarity, I think, and we'll be working from the top down and the bottom up, and with a clear goal in mind, and maybe a niche, some kind of area, one at a time, because the need is incredibly large. But if you focus on particular initiatives or particular needs in the community, that may be how we approach it.
I think it's also really important to not only acknowledge the fact that we should strengthen the partnerships with like long-standing institutions such as LAUSD as well as the community colleges, but there are nonprofit organizations that are able to benefit from workforce investment dollars. Like, for example, I was on the board of the Chinatown Service Center, which is a nonprofit that's been in Chinatown for over 30 years. And when they applied for those dollars, they were able to get those dollars and basically build technology programs where participants clearly benefited and were able to add to their resume those skills and experiences. And so it's not just working with like the larger institutions, because those are no-brainers, but I think it's also to identify and facilitate relationships with nonprofits that are right in the community themselves, because they can more easily identify the needs and the people, the constituencies that would benefit most from the dollars.
Mine's a different perspective. Recently, this last year, LADC won a grant through the Workforce Investment Board to go ahead and work with stressed businesses. On a Dun Bradstreet from 1 to 5, these would be 3s and 4s. If you're a 5, you're probably out of business. So they've been focused on the 3s and 4s. And they were able to do outreach to 12,000 businesses by the time that they finished this contract this week. And what they have learned is about 40% of those businesses, at least, are looking for money. So if they have ever any hope to go ahead and be able to rebuild and grow, they're looking for money. And many of these small businesses really are tied to their personal income too, their house. They've been using their house as an ATM for some time. So if we want to see local businesses grow, we have to figure of not necessarily going ahead and refinancing them with a lower debt limit, but just restarting the clock so they can bring that extra money back to their businesses with a lower amount of interest that they're paying on that money. So all the monies that they're paying on their machinery and things like that, they would have at lower debt limit. That's part of what we have learned through that LADC particular piece. But assume for a second that we are able to go ahead and replicate that instead of focusing on the 3s and the 4s in the Dun Bradstreets. If we could focus on the 1s and the 2s, we could still focus on small businesses, less than 500 employees. But if we were to focus on, just for a second, and coming up with a way of trying to stimulate jobs, we would then be visiting with many, many of these businesses. When I say we, I'm talking about the collective we as the city. And then from there, we can find out what are the job skills that these folks need. We need to prioritize. And to do that, we could very well do that by going ahead and visiting with these businesses that are financially well.
Great. Thank you all very much. We've been joined by the Honorable Council Member Bernard Parks. Mr. Parks, these are our new appointees for the Workforce Investment Board, 4 of the 6. Did you have any questions?
No, I just want to say thank you.
So do I. And with that, I would recommend all of your appointments, and with Mr. Parks' second, we'll advance your appointments to the council. Thank you very much for your service to this, your willingness to serve the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On what is probably the most critical issue of the day, in my view, getting people back to work. Now, we do not have Shamari Davis or Felsicito Cajayon, I understand. Is that right? Okay. So these 4 appointees will be recommended then for to be moved forward, and those who were not here will move forward to council with that recommendation. Is that, yeah, I think.
Recommend approval, then if they're in council that day, you can speak to them at that time.
Yeah, okay. I think I saw Mr. Benbow come in.
Yes, you sure did.
Okay, good. So are there any of the other returning appointees who are here who'd like to take a moment to be heard? Okay. Mr. Benbow, it's not necessary for you to say anything in my view, but if you'd like to say anything about your reappointment, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I'd be happy to proceed with the recommendation unless Mr. Parks has a question. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your great service, and it will be the recommendation of this committee to advance Mr. Benbow's reappointment as well. All right. And as for those other reappointees, likewise, we'll move them forward with that recommendation.
Without recommendation. Okay.
All right. And that concludes item 1, unless there's public comment. So that brings us to item 2, Mr. Chavez.
Item number 2 is a motion on the bonds instructing the Office of Finance with the participation of the CAO and the CLA to report with recommendations on how to exempt businesses in the proposed Jordan Downs annexation area from city business taxes or fees which they are not subject to in unincorporated Los Angeles County.
All right, is there staff here to present on this matter?
Good afternoon, Councilman Krikorian. I'm Pete Galang from the Office of Finance, Chief Tax Compliance Officer 1. And
They're not here.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
regarding this project, the Office of Finance have already requested the City Attorney's Office to make a review in order to determine if the tax exemptions is legally permissible on the business that's located in the annexation area. Because there are some legal concerns that we have before we start preparing the report. So that's where we are right now. We're waiting for the City Attorney's recommendations as to the legal implications on this project.
Okay. Is there someone who's been working on this for the
Well,
city
if
attorney?
you may, I would like to recommend if the committee to request, here is the representative from the City Attorney's Office to speak further on this.
Good afternoon, Valentin Dino, City Attorney's Office. Yes, we received the initially request from the Mayor's Office to look into this issue, and we have internally, and basically, There are existing exemptions and there are possible exemptions. The existing exemptions are already written in the city's code, and they are things like the empowerment zone exemption, assuming that these businesses actually belong to an empowerment zone. There is the small business exemption. There is the new business exemption. That's basically what it is, and they have various amounts. A determination will have to be made based on the information that the businesses would eventually present to the city, to the Office of Finance. The other issue, the possible exemptions, they are governed by the city charter, and the city charter basically requires that any exemption be passed pursuant to ordinance, and that they are in some manner tied to some sort of an economic development zone. And there are different types that are mentioned in the charter, but basically it has to be some sort of economic development zone. And of course, equal protection is an issue. It will have to be not business specific, but more classification or area specific. And that will be a determination made by council. However, we do not at present, and I don't think finance either, has specific information from any of these businesses to make that determination. I'm not sure they actually belong to even an empowerment zone right now.
Okay. Mr. Parks, do you have questions?
I just have a couple of things. I think I can understand where the motion is going, and that trying not to impose on businesses new taxes and fees. But I think there's, in my judgment, has to be a cap, much as we've done with business holiday, that you say if you annex that possibly the first 3 years or whatever, you're not paying new taxes. But at some point, it would appear they have to get on the city's tax rolls. And then on the other issue, I would think that even though we're asking building and safety to make sure all of their permits are secure, either within the proper city departments, at some point, they're going to have to be a part of the ongoing city inspection program and whatever fees that occur there. So I just think that I think we have to study it, but it should be viewed in light of not unlimited, but what is a reasonable cap and how long.
It is my understanding that at least one of the businesses is requesting a 20-year exemption from most.
That's exactly why I made my statement.
Yes, and I'm only addressing the business taxes here, and of course I can address the utility user taxes. The fees, that will be a different practice group.
But see, I think that's what we need. I think sometimes we have motions and we have this motion that's barely one sheet of paper, but it actually could be millions of dollars. And so that's why I think we need some analysis to ensure that we're just, I understand if they're being annexed, probably not necessarily that they requested it. It would be a hardship for them to immediately be imposed upon if we have new and different kinds of permits and fees and taxes. But I don't, in my judgment, believe it should be forever, because at some point, one of the reasons they are coming to the city is the benefit of what the city can provide, but also it doesn't go without a cost.
So the motion that's before us now is simply asking for the report to be prepared, as I understand it. So all of those are important considerations that should be taken into account when that report comes back. What do you think would be a...
If I may suggest, unfortunately, one of the challenges that we've had was the lack of information. And the information will have to come presumably from HACLA, for example, because they handle this deal to begin with. Yes, I understand that. This really is a relatively minor issue in the grand scheme of things, and presumably the ultimate information will have to come from the 4 businesses that are making the request. Until we get specific information, our analysis can only go so far. So one thing that I would suggest is to ask HACLA to come in, Hackline, presumably the attorneys in my office that represented, to basically provide additional advice and work out some timetable for getting this information. And we'll be happy to analyze it as soon as we get it, and we'll deal with this. The only thing that I'm mentioning basically is the fact that these hours is a relatively small portion of the grand total.
And who else would be with you? Would it be Office of Finance, Building and Safety, whatever city department? Because I think probably, I don't know what kind of businesses there are, but I would assume you may have fire department that does some inspections, depending on what's there.
I think they are light industrial. That's my understanding based on the names alone. One of them is a metal recycler. I know that much, Atlas Recycling. The other three, I'm not sure. I didn't get enough information.
Yeah, we don't have enough information on the businesses there. So aside from the one that is a recycling center, that's all we know about business.
And depending on what type of business, there may also be some requirements of additional codes as to equipment, much as we do with restaurants, the grease contraption and all those things.
There probably, yeah.
Probably fire permit, police permit, which are really outside the purview of what we do.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Parks, if we were to recommend then moving this motion forward to council with the recommendation that HACLA also be instructed to assist the Office of Finance in preparing the report, and also with the instruction that the report include consideration of reasonable limitations on the time frame in which these benefits should be provided to these businesses. Would that satisfy your
Oh, yeah. And I think, whatever other city department that may be appropriate should be included.
Maybe CAO can act as
Again, and also we should be looking at any zoning impositions due to equipment, depending on what type of business.
Certainly.
Is that, oh yeah, and the city,
Pardon?
he is
City
absolutely
attorney.
right, the city attorney should be instructed to be involved as well. Is that clear? Makes sense? Okay.
Councilman, did you also want to include the city attorney
We
in the
did.
report? Oh, okay.
Just talked about that. Now, if there's nothing further, gentlemen, from staff on this, we do have public comment on this item before we make the recommendation, and also, I don't know if there's anybody from Ms. Hahn's office who wants to be heard on this. Would you like to be heard? Thank you.
Hi, I'm the intern from Janice Hahn's office, so I can't speak much on the item, but I do know that she's just hoping to move it forward and have the reports come back in regards to everything, all the concerns around. She's just hoping that the reports can go back in a timely manner. I do know that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
No, unless you have
Okay.
questions.
Nope.
Thank you.
But we do have public comment from Aaron Green on this item, and if there's anybody else who would like to comment on this item, please fill out a card. Mr. Green.
Council members, Aaron Green, Director of Political and Community Relations for Africa Consulting, representing Atlas Iron and Metals, one of the 4 businesses in the proposed Jordan Specific Plan area. Atlas is a family-owned business. It's been in the area for 60 years, and it's been a family-owned business for 60 years. And the motion that you have before you today is a result of the work that my client has done in conjunction with my firm, my client's legal counsel, the mayor's office, HACLA, the Department of Building and Safety Planning, the council member's office, and several other parties. And when, I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but when my client was approached with the annexation, my client was somewhat uncomfortable with being brought into the city, as he was relatively comfortable doing business in Los Angeles County. And many of those concerns revolved around taxation and revolved around the permits that he would have to maintain, his conditional use permit, zoning, things like that. So over the last year, we've worked with planning, we've worked to discuss language in the proposed specific plan, and we have struck an agreement with the housing department and the planning department that my client and the city departments that are working on this item are comfortable with. Part of that agreement is a impact that should my client be annexed, that the annexation will be revenue and impact neutral on him, meaning that it won't cost him $1 more on Tuesday than it would have on Monday to operate his business. His business can be very successful one year and then not so much the next year because it's a recycling business. And, you know, he's also concerned about preserving his zoning rights, which is something that we've come to a substantive agreement with the planning department on. But this motion before you preserves the right, or it helps to preserve the right, as the city attorney said, by allowing an ordinance to eventually be drafted on the tax neutrality and permit continuance for my client. So I would ask that you move this to council with all haste. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Parks, any questions?
I just have one concern, that as you related that you've worked out these agreements, but you're coming to the council after the fact. And I would think the council, as the policymakers, would be the final say. There may be recommendations you'd like to offer to the study, but I don't think you or someone else can negotiate something beyond the scope of what our current rules are. And so that's what my concern would be as to your comments, that you know, I understand people would want cost neutrality, and I think that's a recommendation, but I don't think there can be a commitment made on that, particularly when we're asking for a report to study all that. Because it may be cost prohibitive to consider that, plus as we look down the road, it might also impair the specific plan and other issues as it relates to what that community wants to look like down the road, and say that this is an area that's a sanctuary, that you can't do certain things.
The way that the plan is written right now, the four commercial properties, which are light industrial, currently are zoned industrial M2 under the county, and under the draft language of the specific plan will be zoned CM with some specific restrictions and allowances, so that should at later time the businesses decide to leave, those lands do not have to remain industrial. There could be a different use brought there. You also mentioned during your discussion with the city attorney's office, what's the cost going to be to the city? And when we looked at this specifically for my client is the largest of the four. There is also a trucking business, another recycling business, and a very small auto glass business in the area. It looks like my client will probably have waived in taxes, if this is moved through the way that I've proposed it or discussed it, somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $40,000 a year in business taxes. That's what he would be. That's his increase in operating expenses as a result of business tax in the city of Los Angeles. That's not what he's paying now, but that is what it would cost him per year, depending on how much business he does, if he were annexed and required to pay city business tax. So that is a big portion of what this motion is hoping to accomplish.
Okay.
I don't know if that addresses two of the issues, but I'm hoping it provides some more insight.
Well, so far the motion is only trying to accomplish a report back to the council so that the council can make that decision. But I think that background about discussions that your client has had should be discussed in the report, so that council can consider that historical background as well.
Okay.
Okay, that would be the recommendation of the committee, and that brings us to item number 3.
Item number 3 is a communication from the mayor relative to the submittal of an application for a grant award in the amount of $1,825,000 from the United States Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency for the period April 1st, 2011 through March 31st, 2016 for the Los Angeles MBDA Business Center.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Linda Smith, and I have been the executive director of the LA MBOC program, and the program has been operated in the mayor's office since 1994. As you see, this was submitted in October in order for us to notify council, because it was less than 60 days until submittal of the grant application. We were required to submit the grant application for refunding. The deadline was November 10th. And so that was accomplished. And the grant award period to start for the new funding period was to begin April 1st of this past year, and we did get notification that we were awarded the grant. There were some changes to the application when it was submitted. We did a partnership with the University of Southern California because MBDA eliminated one of the centers. There were two funded centers here in Los Angeles, one MBOC by the mayor's office and the other one MBEC, which did the consulting, and we just did broker and matchmaking. MBDA reduced the number of centers across the country, increased a little bit, and combined the purposes of them in one center. So now one center does what the two centers did, brokering and matchmaking and providing technical assistance or consulting services. So the application was submitted after going through approval from the mayor, the chief of staff, to do a joint application with the University of Southern California. And that was done, and the application was awarded to us to operate the new center, which has been rebranded the MBDA Business Center Los Angeles. And we'll be coming back. Obviously, we're in the process of going through all the processes to bring that back for approval to accept that grant.
One thing I didn't understand is that the funding is basically what, outreach for small business?
Yes, minority businesses.
Small minority business.
Yes.
Now, the issue of them paying a membership, how does that work? Is that to do what?
What the agency did was change dramatically the program. It's not just a name change, okay? Number one, we're required to work with larger businesses. Before, the business could be maybe 200 to 500,000 for us to work with. It now needs to be at $1 million or more in gross revenues. Number two, under the old program design, it was optional to charge fees. Just about all the centers in the country who are not tied to a local government and are run by nonprofits or universities were charging fees all along. Obviously, the city of LA chose not to and took the option not to charge fees. It was not optional this time. It was mandatory that all funded centers charge client fees and generate what they call program income. It was left up to each applicant to determine what kind of fee structure they were going to charge with the application. What we determined to come up with was what we call an annual membership fee of $250, which would allow each client to get a minimum of 10 hours of consulting hours from staff or our consulting partners to assess, because we have to grow the businesses now. Now we have to sit down, assess their needs, understand what their growth plans are, and do brokering and matchmaking in view of what their growth plans are. We have to provide strategic business consulting. So in that, they get obviously the access to markets, the access to credit, access to capital, and one of the other new requirements for the program is we now must do export transactions. And we have to do at least 2 export transactions the first year. And after that, it has to be 6 export transactions annually, in addition to securing or promoting what they call strategic transactions, which is teaming, joint ventures, mergers and acquisitions in order to accelerate the growth of businesses.
Just clarity. What's the different uses of the funds from what you're going to use the grant money for and versus how you're going to use the money that you get either from sponsorships or memberships?
Okay. Obviously, the funds, the grant was $300,000 a year for the last 3-year funding cycle, and it did not cover the entire cost of running the program. Quite frankly, the city, out of the mayor's budget, probably matched that by $280,000. And then we did go and raise corporate dollars, and we probably, it was a down cycle, and most of the sponsorship came from banks. So it's been higher in prior years, maybe 150. But the last couple of years, it's been about $75,000 a year. Under this new program design, we will be generating 75. We've committed to generate $75,000 a year in corporate sponsorships. We are quite confident we will do, if not do better, because we've done that very easy. And we will generate $75,000 in program income, and that consists of $50,000 of annual membership fees, and the balance of that will be from what we call success fees. If we are successful in achieving a loan for a client, we will get what is called a success fee. If we're able to grow their sales based upon a work plan, there will be a success fee for that. And both of those are, let's say, we're projected at what we think is a very conservative amount. You have to understand, let me excuse me, I'm a former banker, so I get really down on the numbers. We generally have been successful in brokering $100 million a year in contracts and financing for our clients. Our projection is only on 30%, because that's our MOU between USC and us, is that we are only responsible for generating 30% of the $100 million, and they have to do the 70. So our projections of program income was projected of us only collecting about 50% of that $30 million. Well, we did $100 million. And we've done $100 million over that for the last 3 years. Matter of fact, we just came back from the national conference. We won for the highest number of jobs created by any center in the country for the last 12 months ending March 31, which was 649 jobs. So obviously that will cover and make up for the, we've reduced the burden on the general fund by about $35,000 compared to previous years, because now we're replacing that with program income and corporate contributions.
Thank you.
So, I guess we're just noting and filing this. Is that right? Mr. Parks, unless...
No, just information, no.
That would be the recommendation. Thank you very much. Thanks for the good news, too. And that concludes the agenda. If there is public comment, anybody who'd like to offer public comment, go on forward. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.